Hello, can you hear me?
Ready.
Well, I was taken to court today after a false report was made by one of our ex-employees whom we fired. They had accused me of threatening to shoot him. I do not even have a firearm. I do not even possess one. I don't even know how to use one. So the prosecutor said there is insufficient evidence to sustain a remand. So I am happy. I'm a free man. I'm on my way to Brussels to represent the country in the ACP EU Joint Parliament.
Thank you.
Yes, obvious witnesses. Good evening to you. Wilbert, I hope you can hear me over there.
Now I can hear you. Yeah, I just could hardly hear what Douglas was saying there.
Oh, I apologize. I apologize. Maybe I should repeat it. Good evening to you, obvious witnesses. Here, the leader of the MDCT breakaway or renegade party, Douglas Mwonzora, was arrested and appeared at the Harare Magistrates Court over a charges an offense of threatening to shoot one of his employees who reported him to the police over the alleged threats. Our viewers, readers, and listeners, the man that we're listening to in the video is Douglas Mwonzora himself at the magistrate's court at a time when the prosecutor demanded for the docket to be re-examined or reworked. And Mwonzora, the accused himself, came out to state that he does not possess a firearm. Now, I'm not sure if I heard him right there. And Wilbert, I don't know if you did hear. I didn't hear Douglas Mwonzora saying that he did not threaten. I did not hear him denying threatening his employee. I heard him saying that he doesn't possess a firearm. I'm going to try and repeat that, Wilbert, and then we'll just go straight into our discussion. And hopefully, Wilbert, this time you and the other viewers, readers, and listeners can hear. Thank you.
Ready.
Well, I was taken to court today after a false report was made by one of our ex-employees whom we fired. They had accused me of threatening to shoot him. I do not even have a firearm. I do not even possess one. I don't even know how to use one. So the prosecutor said there is insufficient evidence to sustain a remand. So I am happy. I'm a free man. I'm on my way to Brussels to represent the country in the ACP EU Joint Parliament.
Thank you.
Right, Wilbert, can you hear me? I hope
Yeah, I
you
can
heard.
hear you. It
Yeah.
sounds like the denial. I mean, to say that I didn't threaten him because I don't have any gun and I don't know how to use him. If you threaten me, I'm not going to start speculating whether you've got a gun or not. You threatened to shoot me,
Right. Okay.
and
So in essence, even Simbachi Kanza can threaten you, Wilbert, can threaten to shoot you.
well,
Simbachi Kanza doesn't need to have a gun or know how to use a gun for him to threaten you.
how would I know that you don't know how to use it?
Okay, right. Okay, let's get this right. I've got here Elvis Majivanzira says he said he doesn't own a gun and doesn't know how to use it. So two things. I don't know, I don't even own a gun. And number two, I don't even know how to use it.
If I come to you, Simba, and threaten to shoot you, how do you
Yes.
know that I don't have a gun? So it depends how the threat was met. If the guy said he was pointing a gun at me and was threatening to shoot me, yeah, then you can say, well, I didn't have a gun. One can understand that. But if you said, I'm going to shoot you, you threatened to shoot me, I cannot guess that you don't have a gun, you don't own a gun. That I don't know. I've got to take your word for it. I think it depends on what the allegation is.
Right.
And,
So
and,
the
and this
allegation is threatening. The allegation is
exactly.
not possession of a firearm. Okay. So the employee never went to the police to report Douglas Mwonzora for possessing a firearm. The employee went to report Douglas Mwonzora for threatening to use a firearm.
Yeah, threatening to shoot you, and you can
Yeah.
threaten somebody to shoot somebody by just saying it. Yeah, I'm going to shoot you, without producing the weapon.
The actual weapon.
Yeah, and without, in fact, in this particular case, whether or not he owned it, it's irrelevant. You can still
Right.
shoot with somebody else's gun, and you can
Right.
still
Or
shoot
send
somebody.
someone else to do it.
Yeah, or send somebody else to do it, or
So
you
there
can
are
shoot.
multiple ways. There are multiple ways of Douglas Mwonzora using a firearm on his ex-employee.
Well, in this particular case, I think the allegation we have got to listen to is what exactly, how did he threaten you, would be the question I would ask the guy making the allegation. If he said he produced a gun and was pointing a gun at me, yeah, then people can say, okay, so he had a gun. What kind of a gun was it? Was it a revolver? Was it a rifle or whatever it is? Then he can describe the weapon. But if he's saying he threatened to shoot me, he may have just said it.
Right.
And it is to say, oh, I don't own a gun and I don't know how to use a gun. You don't have to own a gun to threaten somebody. And you don't have to know how to use a gun to threaten somebody. So I think this one is really question of people want to know what the allegation really is. And Mwonzora here is being very conservative with information, And
right. Could we say here that Mwonzora has confessed, has actually damaged his own defense by speaking immediately outside court while a case is ongoing?
Well, I think in this particular case, that the fact that it's already in the courts, if he's going to comment on it, he really need to say to the people, what is it? How did? I mean, when the police arrested you or told you have got to appear in court, what did they say? Did they say somebody alleged that you threatened them? And that's why you've got to appear in court. And maybe that's why the docket has got to be made properly. What was the nature of the threat? And in this particular case, if the docket has not been made and the charge has not been made to him, it is premature for him to be commenting on it as well. You are denying that you own a gun. Did the person say you threatened him with a gun and you produced it? Because you don't have to produce a gun to threaten somebody. You can just threaten like we are talking right now. I can threaten you. They are somewhere else in the other one part of the country. It could be in another country. But the fact that I'm threatening, I'll come and kill you, that is a threat. You don't have to know that I own a gun. You don't have to know that I've got expert knowledge on how to use guns. The fact that I've threatened that I'm going to kill you is a threat in itself. So I think it sounds like here that our friend Mwonzora is either is deliberately misleading the public by giving very little information, or he's jumping the gun himself.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So I would also like to see the evidence because I understand that there are actually messages that he sent. Maybe it would be good to examine what the actual evidence there. But wait, let's go to another one. He's actually also announces that he's going to Brussels to represent the country. Did you hear that? The
Who,
country or the
Mwonzora?
country? Yeah. At the ACP. So Mwonzora is going to be there in Brussels next week.
To represent Zimbabwe for what?
The ACP, some interparliamentary conference with the European Parliament.
Oh, well,
Yes.
that's interesting, and we shouldn't be
And then
surprised.
who is he representing? Who is he representing? I'm curious to want to know how many people he actually represents.
Well, this is one of the reasons why the opposition are so keen to be on the gravy train. Now he is on the gravy train. He is making the most of it, and that is what we should expect. He is getting to travel a lot, and the fact that he is actually the leader of the opposition, because
I feel like
MDC,
vomiting. What did you say, Wilbert?
well, the leadership of the opposition is decided on the national harmonized election, and MDC alliance was the main opposition party that emerged out of that election. By
Right.
elections, even if Chamisa was to win all the by-elections, the results of the 2018 election are what decides who won what in parliament. It's not by-elections. So I agree with you that in this particular case, particularly given the pathetic performance in the by-elections, it sounds a bit hollow, but that is what the law says. That's why he's still there, and he has got his proportional representation MP still there. And he is also, that is why he is the one who received the Political Party Finance Act allocation of the MDC Alliance based on the 2018 results.
Wow. Wilbert, you're making you're making a lot of people vomit tonight. Someone says it. And Mwonzora also said a false report. It was not a false report, but maybe a false accusation. But the report itself was not false. Okay, that's Gashia Mutomba there, right? Okay, so Wilbert, Mwonzora will be at the ACP. And I presume this will be the last ACP before the upcoming elections. Do you think that we are ready as a nation to go into elections?
Well, we are not ready for elections. Let's face it. There's not been even one token democratic reform implemented. Or everybody who observed those 2018 elections have come up with anybody that is with any democratic credentials have condemned those elections, and they've come up with this is what you need to do to make sure the elections are free, fair, and credible. And the tragedy is not even one meaningful reform has been implemented. So to say that we are ready for 2023 elections, it's meaningless. How can we be ready for an election when we haven't implemented any reforms? When we don't even have a verified voters roll? And I noticed in today's press conference, Advocate Fazama did highlight that point, that there is no verified voters roll.
Right. So there's no verified voters roll at present, and we're talking about an election.
You,
So,
but you can go through the whole list. There's no verified voters roll. There's no meaningful reform that has been implemented. The violence is rampant. The coercion of ordinary voters, even Mnangagwa himself, he has been boasting that there will be frog marching, the people in the rural areas. Sabu Kumberi, Van Pakatap, chairman we party kumasure, muchida kundovota, and tinozoziva kuti wavhota ndivanani, vavhotera ani. You know, clearly telling the people those elections are not going to be free, fair, and credible. And without reforms, those things are going to happen. That is the reality. So we are not ready for free, fair, and credible election. And it is a pity that we are going through this whole motion again. And at the end of the day, mark my word, the same people who are participating in these elections are the ones who will be crying out and saying, oh, the elections were stolen. They are stolen already now, before we even go any further.
right. So in essence, if someone is going to win, I want to try and draw a strong parallel here. You seem to be bringing out what I said recently on a Twitter space, that those who want to win the upcoming elections, Wilbert, to overcome in the upcoming elections is to win now. If they can't win now, then they should forget about winning. Am I right there? The process of winning has to start now, or the winning has to start now. If you can't do certain things today, if you can't bend or put Mnangagwa into a corner today, forget about in August. Am I right?
Well, when you say win today, what do you mean?
What I mean, Wilbert, is practically exercising the muscle of democracy. If you cannot demonstrate your state power ability to exercise democracy, or at least enjoy make democracy to be felt today, you won't get it in August.
Yeah, but how can you get democracy to be felt today? That's what I'm trying to get at, Simba.
Oh, I see. And I mean here, Wilbert, by deploying techniques, Wilbert, that can force Mnangagwa to start, and the institutions to start operating democratically. Like, I'm going to give an example, Wilbert. The sanctions regime, the impact that it had, the sanctions, what they had on Mnangagwa post the coup, was the pressure to change, the pressure to demonstrate change. And to a certain degree, Wilbert, between November 2017 and August 2018, there was a measure of the system and Mnangagwa trying their best to pull back and allow the oxygen of democracy to be exercised. During that period, there was that, there were those, can I call them open windows? Okay, they were not fully open, of course. But what I'm saying is, the people did experience a measure of democracy. in its limitations. So that is what I mean, Wilbert.
Well, I think I agree with you there, and part of the way of demonstrating that right
Mhm.
now would have been, for instance, that you should have a verified voters roll. That will give people confidence that we know who is on the voters roll.
Absolutely. So right now, Wilbert, just going into what exactly you are calling for, the opposition can tap into and exercise this democracy, for instance, by forcing Mnangagwa to release, or the ZEC to release a voters roll. They could withdraw, they could boycott, right? They could use other methods of sabotage that force the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission to release the voters roll.
There, I agree with you, Simba. But the question is, you've got to ask yourself: is why is it that the opposition have never pushed for a verified voters roll? And before you answer that, you've got also to remember, Kuti, we keep talking about, oh, you need to implement reforms, you need to make sure that ZEC is independent.
Mm.
MDC had the opportunity to implement all those reforms we keep talking about during the GNU. They failed to implement even one. So you've got to understand, why did they fail to implement even one reform during the GNU when they had the golden opportunity to do so?
Yeah, someone is Elvis Manzivanzra saying boycotting is not an option. Elvis, why is boycotting not an option? Maybe we need to hear Elvis. Elvis, do you want to come on video or on audio? Can I send you a link? I would like to hear you. Why is boycotting not an option?
Well, while we wait for Elvis, actually, I think this is one of the problems that some Zimbabweans have.
Mhm.
Elections are a contestation, and you cannot have a meaningful contestation without the rules. And if you're going to have the rules, you have to define what those rules are, number one. Number two, and you've got to make sure that if somebody deliberately breaks the rules, they are punished. It's like a football game. You know, if you're offside, the referee blows the whistle, and the game stops, and it doesn't continue. To say that we can have, we will have all those rules offside and so forth, and then somebody continuously scores from an offside position, and even if the referee blows or doesn't blow, we continue. No. What is the point of having that rule if it's going to be disregarded? You know, so this question of saying, "Oh, boycott is not," it is part of the punishment. There is a point where you can say these elections, if we don't obey A, B, C, D, they will be so flawed, they become totally meaningless. To keep on participating just for the sake of participating is nonsense. You know, there are certain rules that if you break, yes, you are given an appropriate punishment. But there are some where you're saying that is a double red line. You cross that, that is a point where you can say, well, we can't continue with this game. You know, and I think those who keep on arguing boycotting is out of the question. They lack imagination. You know, they've boxed themselves in a position where we are going to participate no matter what. So what is the motive for ZANU-PF to keep to stick to the rules if they know you participate regardless?
All right. Okay. I don't know if someone heard there. Can you repeat what you just said, Wilbert?
No, what I was saying is there are people who have argued this point that boycotting elections is not an option. They lack imagination. Elections are a contestation. And like all contestations, there are set rules. if the elections are going to be meaningful, they must be free, fair, and credible. And there must be benchmarks to say, yes, they were free, yes, they were fair, yes, they were credible. If you break all the benchmarks, then the elections are not free, fair, and credible. And to keep on saying it doesn't matter, we still participate, shows lack of imagination. Because in this case here, one of the benchmarks, as far as I'm concerned, is that we should have a verified voters roll. We should all be able to say, yes, the people who are going to vote are eligible to vote. And we should be able to verify that the people who vote in the election are those who were on the voters roll. You know, but if you don't have a verified voters roll, anyone can vote. And some of them will vote more than once. We know in Zimbabwe there have been people who have been dead, known to be dead, and yet they vote in an election. How can that process be free, fair, and credible? It becomes a meaningless joke, you know. And therefore, then to start saying, before we say anything, boycotting elections is out of the question, clearly shows that here is somebody who is refusing to think. You know, we have had rigged elections for the last 43 years. And we want to end this case of rigged elections and bad governance.
So what you're saying is, if in 1980, if the other parties had withdrawn from the elections, if they had boycotted on the basis that ZANU-PF had threatened people, threatened to shoot people and go back to work, that could have been a defining moment. That could have been the necessary drawing of the line that you're talking about. That could have been an imagination that, you know, put into action. That's what you're saying, right?
Well, in 1980, I think the situation there was a lot more complex, because one of the reasons why ZANU-PF was saying, if we do not win the election, we'll go back to the bush, is they say they did not trust the British and the white regime to conduct the election in a free, fair, and credible way.
Right. So there were counter accusations. In essence, that's what you're saying.
Yes.
But the others, but it's kind of the same thing right now. It's the same thing. ZANU-PF today is accusing Nelson Chamisa of being unfair because Chamisa has so-called benefited from the sanctions. So it's the same thing, Robert. Accusations won't stop. Accusations will always be there. It's right now, for instance, in a war situation, Putin is saying, you, the West, you started the war. The West is saying, Putin, you started the war. So what I'm saying is, you always, whenever you're dealing with political parties or these type of actors, political actors, there'll always be accusations and counter accusations. What you're bringing out today, Wilbert, is that anyone who is getting into an election and truly wants change, and if they can't launch an armed struggle, if they can't do this, if they can't go to court, and the only other option there is to boycott, is the force, the blast, the weight, the slab of a boycott.
No,
like Morgan Tsvangirai did it in.
Let's focus on the case of Zimbabwe.
Yes.
Whatever accusations ZANU-PF is saying against the opposition, the one we're talking about here, a verified voters roll. What is their excuse for failing to produce a verified voters roll? What is their excuse? They've had 43 years. They failed to produce a verified voters roll in 43 years. So this is where the issue is. This is a government that is in power, that is tasked, given the responsibility to make sure that elections are free, fair, and credible. And the regime is not doing it. And there's absolutely no excuse for failing to produce a verified voters roll. None.
Right. Right.
The question now goes to the opposition. Why is the opposition keeping on participating in an election that is so flawed that you don't even have something as basic as a verified voters roll? That is a question that should be asked the opposition. Because ZANU-PF, one of the reasons why ZANU-PF is not producing a verified voters roll is that they know the opposition would participate regardless. That is an important point. It's like you
Right.
and me. If we agree that this is the rule on how we should play football, if I know you as my opponent, you would let me get away with being offside, playing rough, and so forth, there is no motive for me to stick to the rules.
Wilbert, on another note here, do you agree that there are people here who don't care? I mean, these are supporters of the opposition, and to them, they just want to exercise their vote. They don't care about reforms. They don't care about, well, they know that reforms will be difficult here. And to them, they are the ones who are actually dragging the opposition. They're dragging Chamisa. They're saying, "Look, just do it. We don't care. We just want to punish Mnangagwa, even if he was to win by hook and crook, even if he kills people. We just want to land on his head."
Yeah, but what landing on their head have they done these last 43 years? You know, and I think we should also find out who those people are, because if you are going to participate just to give ZANU-PF legitimacy, then you complain about the dictatorship. What are you complaining about? The main problem we have here is that some of the people who are encouraging the opposition to participate no matter what, they don't understand what free, fair, and credible elections are. That's number one. Number two, they are desperate for change. They don't know when you're desperate, you sometimes do the worst thing. You make your situation worse. So we cannot base our election on people who don't even know what free, fair, and credible elections are. But the main motivation for participating in these elections is not so much the supporters, is the opposition leaders themselves. You have got to understand why they failed to implement the reforms during the GNU when they had the golden opportunity to do so, to understand why they are not doing it now. Because unless you understand that, you'll never understand why they are not doing it now. And during the GNU, the reason they didn't implement any reforms is the minute they were in the GNU, they were comfortable. They realized that they would do themselves a favor by allowing ZANU-PF to remain the dominant party, and they play second fiddle. They were content with that. That's why they didn't implement even one meaningful reform during the GNU. They were happy with what they were getting. Many of them actually thought they would become Zimbabwe's main second biggest party, alternatively even being able to get into government. Not knowing that, of course, by failing to implement reforms, it meant that ZANU-PF still had the carte blanche powers to rig elections. And they were surprised with the 2013 election results when ZANU-PF had a clear majority, a commanding majority. They didn't expect that. But ever since, they've settled for second place. The opposition are not contesting to remove ZANU-PF from power, regardless of how pathetic ZANU-PF's performance has been. They are content being the main opposition party. People like Tendai BT will contest these elections, not fully aware that the whole process is flawed, but they believe they've got a chance of winning the few seats that ZANU-PF is giving away to the opposition to entice them to participate. And that is what they are after. Are you still there, Simba?
Yes, I am here, Bobet. Sharon Chasakara is saying which party is Douglas Monzara representing, because we used to know him in UK. So what's happening now? Yes, we want Chamisa. I don't understand Sharon Chasakara. When you say we used to know him in UK, who exactly, Monzora? Elvis Tongai Madziwanzira says, let's take it this way. Do you honestly think that even if Chamisa boycotts the next election, Wubert, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, right. Someone is saying here, let's take it this way. Do you honestly think that even if CCC boycotts the next elections, ZANU-PF will postpone them? No, the Monzoras and the Chingomas who participate in the election, ZANU-PF is both the referee and the player. Wellington Tepo says, do you understand that ZANU-PF have its own 53% permanent voters who belong to ZANU-PF cells? And okay, right. And right now, they are busy. They're busing their supporters to registration centers, while opposition are busy opposing their ZANU-PF moves to bus supporters to registering for voting. When they win, the opposition cry of rigging. Did you get that, Wilbert? Wellington
Well,
here is saying,
I got that. I think
yeah.
this is
Do you
again
understand that
another.
ZANU-PF have its own 53 permanent voters, right? Who belong to ZANU-PF cells? Okay, so ZANU-PF has done its mathematics already for winning, and right now they are busy busing their supporters to registration centers, while opposition, right, are busy opposing their ZANU-PF moves to bus supporters to registering for voting. When they win, the opposition cry of rigging. So Poitwa say, what must be done there? Wellington Suela has just said, look, do you understand that they are permanent voters? 53% of the electorate are permanent voters for ZANU-PF. That's what he
Well,
is supposing there.
at the present
Where did
moment,
you get those numbers, Wellington?
at the present moment, the system is loaded in such a way that ZANU-PF cannot lose these elections. That is
Right.
clearly obvious. One of the reasons why they will never produce a verified voters roll is that they don't want you to see who is going to vote and who is not going to vote. That is one of the reasons why. 2 weeks ago, we saw videos of people who were bused from Lomboshava to Harare, from Koromonzi to Harare, and they were registering in Harare. That could only mean one thing. Those rural voters do not live in Harare, but they were being bused in to register in Harare so that they could vote in Harare. And I can bet you they will also vote in their rural constituents. And that is how ZANU-PF manages to build their majority. People must understand that if you're going to have free, fair, and credible election, there must be rules. This idea that we as long as we hold the elections, it doesn't matter, we can disregard the rules, is nonsensical. That is what has allowed ZANU-PF to rig elections again and again. Because as long as they know that you will participate, no matter how flawed the process gets, there is no incentive for those who have got the power to rig to stop rigging. That is obvious. I mean, that should be obvious to anybody. In this particular case, if even the international community have observed these elections and said, wow, these elections are not free, fair, and credible. This is the European Union in 2018. And these are 23 recommendations that you need to implement to make the process meaningful. None of those recommendations have been implemented. So, and you still say, oh, okay, we still must go and participate. And this idea that we Triple C must participate to stop ZANU-PF or to stop these other smaller parties like Mwonzora and Laf Maduku getting into power is a flawed argument. Are we saying here that we are going to perpetuate the ZANU-PF dictatorship just to stop Mwonzora and Maduku getting the few seats that are allocated to the opposition? That is not the purpose of elections. Elections are there so that everybody can have a meaningful say in the governance of the country. So the opposition or anybody or you or me should be concerned about the process itself must be genuinely a process that allows the ordinary citizen to have a meaningful say. And in this case here, if it doesn't, there is no point in participating and give it legitimacy. The same argument was used by Ian Smith. Ian Smith in 1978 decided that he was going to have an internal settlement with Muzorewa and Dawaning-Stole. If ZANU-PF and ZAPU at the time had said, well, we are not going to allow Muzorewa and Dawaning-Stole to have the few seats that the whites were allocating to the blacks, and therefore then we are going to participate in giving the whole process legitimacy, then we would have a flawed independence all these years. Because that internal settlement, there is no question about it. It was meant to have blacks reduced at best second-class citizens. Your vote and my vote would have never counted in the same strength as a white person's vote. You were a second-class citizen then. That was the point. And by boycotting them, the whole world could see that internal settlement was flawed. And that denied Ian Smith legitimacy. And to think we can have an election where the opposition say, well, we can't participate in these elections. And somehow, even if the people who won 4% in the last election participate, we still think, no, that still gives ZANU-PF legitimacy. Clearly shows, again, the lack of imagination from some quarters. You know.
But I asked Wellington Tsepo there for information, and then Wellington Tsepo says this was information concerning the 53% permanent voters that he suggested there. And Wellington Tsepo says ZANU-PF have 53,000 cells, okay? And these cells have got 50 members each. So if you multiply 53,000 by 50, but that's 2.6 million already.
Well, yeah.
So what are you thinking, Wubert? You're thinking that ZANU-PF is probably going to maybe do violence and like really militaristic threats against those those inside the cells, monitor them and the like and the like. There's going to be a lot of assisted voting, and maybe people will be followed through if a cell loses an election. So people right now, maybe people are being the maths has already been completed.
ZANU-PF has got many ways of rigging these elections, Simba. And I think that is the reality that some people are failing to appreciate here. They've got multiple ways of rigging elections. Those sales is one thing. They also have a situation here where they've stopped 3 million Zimbabweans in the diaspora from voting. They've got all the resources, state resources, they can use to further their own party interest. One of the ways they've done it is they've started paying the village heads up to the chiefs incentives, so that those people are now, for all practical purposes, ZANU-PF commissars. In some areas now, if you go to the village and you start talking as an opposition leader, the village head will be they may not approach you because they are afraid of you, but those relatives of yours will be in serious trouble. They will be cross-examined. Who was that person? What did he want? You know, in some cases, you hear of situations where people have been told, we do not want the opposition here. And if you keep talking to the opposition, you'll be forced to leave the village. This is the level of intimidation we are talking about here. And until the system is reformed, that is not going to stop. The only reason why the opposition is tolerating it is that they are not contesting to win the majority in government. They are contesting to win the majority of the few seats that ZANU-PF gives away to the opposition. Chamisa is contesting to be the leader of the main opposition.
You're accusing Chamisa, Will, but I think we need to have Chamisa here, or we need to have Shoshe to answer that allegation.
Well, I mean, it is a fact. This is why they claim themselves that they are going to win big, and they've not done anything to indicate that they are going to win big. They need to give people the impression they are going to win big, when in reality they know the elections are being rigged. The violence is one way ZANU-PF is rigging those elections. They know it. The failure to produce a voters' roll, a verified voters' roll, is another way of rigging those elections. They know it, and yet they still participate. You've got to ask yourself, why are you keeping on participating?
Right. Give us a way forward with it. I think that's what people want to know. Positivity now. Let's have a positive way forward that people can go to sleep and they know, look, we feel here. There is a way out.
Well, the ideal solution would have been for us to insist on reforms, but it is now too late to implement any meaningful reforms.
Yes. I know we have done that, but I'm asking you, give us a positive way forward. Let's
Yes,
put you in charge of.
that's what I'm
Let's put you
coming
in
to now.
charge. Let's put you in charge of the CCC overnight. Give us a way forward.
The CCC should not participate in a flawed process. That should not be even open for debate. But I know, because if I was the leader of Triple C right now, if I said that, I can tell you that all the other Triple C leaders will participate regardless, will participate as independent, because they don't care that the elections are flawed. That is an issue that people must understand. They are after the few seats ZANU-PF is giving away. They are after the US 40,000 Mnangagwa was dishing out in November to members of parliament, knowing fully well that that money is bonus. Those people would never be expected to pay it back. And they are after those benefits. So you'll never stop most of the Triple C members right now from participating. But what must be understood by ordinary people there is that they have got to stand firm on that ground. There is no point in participating in a process that is so flawed. All they are doing is giving ZANU-PF legitimacy. And if we were to stand firm on that position, ensure those people who are participating are just sellouts, then you are denying them political credibility. You are also showing that the process itself is flawed. And armed with those two things, you can honestly say ZANU-PF cannot be legitimate as a result of a flawed and illegal election process, and cannot be legitimate for having a discredited opposition participating in the election. That will force ZANU-PF to lose legitimacy, take us back to where we were in 2008 when we needed a new GNU. We will need a new GNU to implement the democratic reforms to make sure that ZEC is now independent, the police is now independent, and all these bodies are able to carry out their basic functions to ensure elections are free, fair, and credible. That is a process that we cannot avoid. And there are some people there who, the minute you mention GNU, they think, oh, no, we failed last time. The reason that failed last time is because MDC gave up on the issue of implementing reforms because they were comfortable. This time we'll see to it that we appoint people who will implement those reforms. You cannot have it both ways. You cannot participate in these elections and expect the results to be any different. After 43 years of rigged elections, it is absolutely outrageous that some people still expected there will be a meaningful change this time. When it clearly, even now, it is clear that ZANU-PF is rigging these elections.
Wow, Wilbert, it's been great having a discussion tonight. Let us catch up later on, and if you're up, we can analyze the news at midnight.
Okay, man.
Thank you so much.
Okay, good night.